I'd like to talk tonight about perspective and how shifting our perspective can change not only our lives, but the lives of the ones around us. Am I supposed to have a clicker for this thing? Thank you. I want to ask you guys a question. All of you, the audience as a whole. Don't answer all at once. It's a yes or no question. If your answer is yes, I want you to raise your hand. I'll count them. I think I can still count, or at least take an estimate. How many people out there look at me and think, well, that guy looks homeless? How many of you are wondering, who let this guy on stage? Okay, now I didn't say, who here thinks I look like a criminal? That's a whole other TED Talk. As I said, I'm here to talk about perspective. And to do that, I'm going to talk about homelessness. Get comfy with that word, it's going to come up a lot. See, I showered today, I had a decent meal. I even drove here in my own car. Those are all privileges, luxuries even, that we often take for granted, myself included. Luxuries many homeless people don't have. Getting here in my own car isn't a flex, trust me. It's a 2014 Subaru and I've seen shopping carts with better rims. But it still counts as privilege and one I'm grateful for. But here's a real question. Does homelessness have a look? A smell? Does it have a feeling? Sure, sometimes. I mean, you walk by someone on the street and your brain instantly goes, drugs, crime, mental illness, bad decisions. Listen, I do it too, we all do it. It's automatic. It's bias. And we all carry it around, whether we admit to it or not. You ever have a boss that says, leave your bias at the door when you enter a meeting? I mean, what is that? What we need to do is check that bias rather than suppress it. When something comes up that makes you feel a certain way, maybe it's profiling someone. Maybe it's making an assumption based on their cultural differences or opposing values. When that feeling pops up, and it will, think about it. Sit with it. Feel it. But if you pretend you don't have bias or ignore these feelings, no change will ever happen. Bias is basically pre-installed software. It's like Windows 8. You didn't want it, but it came with the package. You know what I mean? You just can't pretend you don't have it. So when I asked you all if I looked homeless, most of you thought, no way. He's on a TEDx stage. Yeah, he looks healthy. Maybe a little dad bod deluxe, but otherwise healthy. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to look homeless. Even when they are. Even when they've come to terms with their condition. Shame, guilt, embarrassment. It's all part of the deal, trust me. Perspective is everything. Think about it like this. Do we judge the person working at Wendy's? Some people might. Maybe it's the third time this week Wendy's got their coffee order wrong. They take it out of the one behind the counter. They instantly think, this clerk is useless, stupid, can't hold a real job. No wonder they're working in the fast food industry. Well, others might think, at least they've got a job. They're not homeless. Give them a blue ribbon, a pity vote for humanity. Neither of these thought processes are positive ones. One might hold less animosity and hate than the other, but neither do any good. So flip it around. What if last week that Wendy's job pulled that person off the street? Cheap nuggets and a uniform that smells like grease rather than despair. To them, that job is like winning the lottery. Who knows, maybe it's their dream job. Maybe this job is putting their kid through college. For all we know, they could own the place. Perspective changes everything. Let's rewind. I'm going to tell you guys a story. Phil already mentioned, 20 years ago, I was homeless, right here in Vernon. Okay, now it's time to do this. That's the cover of a book I'm writing. Yeah, it looks cool, mostly created using AI because nothing says gritty street memoir like designed by ChatGPT. But back then, I wasn't thinking about books. I certainly wasn't thinking about writing a book. I was thinking, how do I survive one more day? I was 16. I got the boot from home. Big fight with my folks. For years, I blamed them for everything. Now I realize it takes two to tango. Unfortunately for me, back then I was doing the Macarena. That first winter, I bounced between families. I couch surfed mostly. By 17, I was completely on my own. I was sleeping in parks, hopping trains, hitchhiking, and panhandling. It's all in the book. I even paid other homeless people to buy me beer because nothing screams street smarts like trusting a drunk guy with your last 10 bucks. By the summer of 2004, I was living in a tent in Vancouver's downtown east side with a guy named Phil, different Phil. Phil was a Yoda to my street life, only I wasn't learning how to use the Force. Phil taught me a lot about the streets, how to survive, but also about myself. I still can't move objects with my mind, but predicting the future is a little easier. Heroes come in all different shapes, sizes, and socioeconomic statuses in this story. I witnessed things down there on the streets of the Lower East Side that no 17-year-old should ever see. I saw my first overdose, my first death. I was introduced to gangs and violence, alcohol, addiction, and what it looked like when someone truly gave up. Yet somehow I didn't. Here's the weird part. Since I was 14, my dream was to become a cop. Imagine that. A homeless kid in a tent, only a few years later, dreaming of pinning on a badge. Meanwhile, the cops were profiling me every day. Were like, kid, give it up. You're never going to be a cop. Move on. Plot twist. I was just undercover for a really long time. Life's funny like that. So I pushed through. I graduated high school on time while still living in a tent. I worked part-time in fast food, moved in with a roommate, paid rent, and bought a car. By 19, I was hired at the glass plant where my dad worked. The work was hard, but otherwise life seemed okay. By 20, I bought my first house. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Don't get me wrong, my 20s weren't all glory. In fact, they were likely anything but success. I was laid off twice from 2 different companies. The clothing company I started failed in its first year. I had mountains of debt, divorce was incoming, and with the separation, I became a single dad. You get it. Pretty much the full starter pack for a failed adulthood. But in my 20s, I also continued to discover myself, what I was capable of. I became a dad, that was something. I started working in social work, the dream. That was my dream anyway. By the end of my 20s, I was well into a social work undergrad program. My 30s started off rocky too. At 29, separation was right around the corner. By 30, I was divorced, living back with my folks with a 3-year-old in tow. And all this while trying to focus on university and working part-time in employment services. Yeah, life was far from simple. If it wasn't for my parents then, I'd have 2 choices. Back to the streets, not an option, I had a kid now. Or drop out of school. Options others are forced to take. I once again found privilege and luxury in my life. At 31, I graduated from the University of Victoria with a social work degree. I specialized that degree in child welfare, and I completed a practicum with the same ministry that once turned their back on me. At 32, I graduated from Depot. My life dreams were becoming a reality. I achieved that goal, the badge. The same streets I once slept on are the streets I now patrol. Talk about full circle. Well, maybe that's not full circle. It's more like a weird figure eight. But here I am. So how did I do it, you ask? The truth is, I didn't do it alone. I had friends, teachers, families, faith, and parents who, despite everything, gave me a foundation strong enough to come back to. And maybe most importantly, I never lost that stubborn teenage dream of being more than my circumstances. Every single dream I ever conjured up in my feeble little mind has become a reality. It's partially because of who I am, but my background, the environment I grew up in, the foundation and the resources that were available to me played a huge role in any part of my story that you might call success. I'll forever be grateful for that. See, many people that we see struggling on the street have fallen victim to something. I had not. Street life wasn't in the cards for me, yet I lived them, survived them, and because of my circumstances, my life chances for success were far greater. So many people I knew struggled to survive. They experienced copious amounts of trauma. Their full circle was a cycle, whether that was drugs, a cycle of abuse, or an undiagnosed mental disorder. There's so much to the story that we will never see on the surface. So, I say this. Don't be so quick to judge the book by its cover. Do I believe every street-entrenched person is good? No, certainly not. But I do my best not to judge anyone before knowing more about them. The black sheep is an idiom that describes a member of a group that doesn't fit in. Its connotation is generally negative, but the one who challenges the status quo can often elicit positive change within the group. And that's me in a nutshell, the black sheep. That's why I titled the book that. I choose to view that label as something positive. I could choose to view that negatively, but then I wouldn't be here talking to you. So, let's come back to where we started. Do I look homeless? Not today, but that's the point. See, I never looked homeless, even when I was. I had resources and a support system that kept me grounded. I was able to shower at school. I had friends with parents who brought me in when it was cold. I had way more than most people I once knew when I was living rough, if you can call it that. Life back then to a 17-year-old kid was just a spontaneous adventure. Spontaneity or whatever, that was me. I was invincible. But it was that adventure that brought me closer to that kind of life. Gave me perspective. It opened my mind to what was, what could be, and that each person you encounter is just that. They're a person. They're someone's wife, sister, brother, mother, cousin. They once belonged somewhere. Homelessness doesn't have one look. It's not a smell. It's not even a stereotype. It's a condition, a season of life, and sometimes it's the spark that forces you to rewrite your story. Now, some of you may have noticed that this speech isn't necessarily about homelessness. It's about perspective. It's about how we perceive things on the outside without giving it a second glance and changing that perspective. It's about checking our bias. It's about doing your best not to judge someone else's life without knowing more than what lies beneath the surface. We're often so quick to judge others when we haven't really even given our own life that second glance. Homelessness is just an example of that. It's something I have found that resonates with me. Now, my resonation with homelessness may not be the same as yours. Maybe yours is something completely different. Maybe you judge your neighbor. Maybe it's other families. Maybe it's someone's parenting. Yep, guilty, I've done that too. But maybe it has nothing to do with anyone else. Maybe it's you. Maybe you look at your life and hate everything about it. You could use a faster car, a bigger house, a better job, more money. A family that is less draining. I urge you, rather than resenting those things or looking for faults, do this. Look at your life and say, at least I've got a car or access to transportation. I've got a roof over my head, a job that pays me enough money to live, a family that loves me and supports me. I may have less than others, but I've got what I need. The shift in our perspective can change everything. I don't always love my job, yet I'm always grateful that I have one. I find peace with that. Yeah, some days I come home and it seems everyone needs a piece of me after I've just had that all day long. They need me all at once. I have no time to breathe. But I can tell you, I don't sit down at the end of my day and resent any part of it. I'm extremely grateful that I have a family who needs me. And if I do find myself traveling down that path, I stop and reflect. I've had less, and I've worked hard for more. I've come to realize that there will always be a want for more. And wanting more for your life isn't a bad thing, but constantly living in the future and never accepting or finding peace in the present can be a difficult hurdle in the pursuit of happiness. I've also come to realize that sometimes we do need to stop and smell the flowers. Be the good neighbor. Lift someone up when they are down. Stop judging everything and everyone so quickly. Let's be grateful for what we have, even if, like myself, you are the black sheep. Find strength in yourself to power through and find the positive. See, I'll forever be the black sheep. But honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. Thank you.